Oh my gosh, you guys, I am so excited for today's video because if you can believe it or not, we just had our 1 year mark at our new location for our second coffee shop here in Mountain Home, Idaho. It seems crazy that a year has already gone by, and for a lot of you guys as followers, you remember the entire journey of us getting this second coffee shop started. So I just wanted to take a quick second and give you guys an update on how things are going, what has happened in 1 year, things that I wish I would have known about having two locations, some hard lessons, and then also just like barely touch a little bit on how our business is getting affected by COVID-19 and how we've had to make adjustments and changes and how the future looks. So let's jump into it. Okay, so as you can imagine, 1 whole year of lessons and learning has been pretty crazy for Casey and I both. Some things that I guess we weren't prepared for was just how much our lives were going to change once we had two coffee shops. In a lot of ways, our lives changed for the better. If you guys haven't necessarily heard our story from the beginning, I'll quickly try to paraphrase it for you so that you just know the journey that we've been on over the past 2 years. In 2013, we opened our very first coffee shop. It was a shed, a literal 10 by 10 foot shed. We had a local man build us the shell, and then we went to Lowe's, Home Depot, all of that, and bought everything to do the interior of the shed. We operated the shed like a food truck. So we had freshwater tanks and gray water tanks, but we did not have free-flowing water. We were not hooked up to the city water, sewer, and garbage. So we had to handle the tank situation every single day. The reason we started that way is because I was 20 years old and Casey was 22 at the time. And things were just scary to start a business at such a young age. It was hard to get financing at that age, and it was hard to really put every single thing we had in our lives financially into one thing, just because we were just starting out. We had just purchased our first house, and so we just wanted to make sure that we were going to be okay financially. So because we started with such a minimal building, we ended up not having to get a ton of financing. A lot of people ask us about getting financing at 20 years old, and they question how I was able to get a loan at 20 years old. And I'll tell you, the loan that we got was a signature loan. It was a high interest loan. It was not for a ton of money, and that's just because, like I said, we did a shed and we did all the work ourselves. All the equipment that we used on the inside, we bought used off Craigslist from coffee shops that had closed. It was a modge podge of things. And so we opened, we did not have employees, so that we didn't have that expense at all. We opened very quietly. We didn't tell anyone we were opening. And because we couldn't afford employees, I worked there by myself. We had some friends and family who would just come check on me, make sure I was okay. Casey was a full-time cop, and he was still working his full-time job because we were very scared and we didn't know what was going to happen with this new business venture we were doing. The bad part about working there all by myself was that we opened at 5 in the morning and we didn't close until 7 p.m. So I had to be there at about 4:30 in the morning, and then I didn't get to leave until about 7:30 once all the closing chores were done. So I believe that's a 14-hour day, if I can remember off the top of my head. And we did that every single day. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it just kept going. And so that alone was a ton of work. It was exhausting. I was there by myself. Remember, we didn't have running water, so we didn't have a bathroom. So sometimes Casey, when he was on night shift at the time, so he was working 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. He would get off work at 6 a.m., let me go to the bathroom. He would go to bed. He would wake up around 2 p.m. and then let me go to the bathroom again, bring me food, and then he would hang out as long as he could until he had to go to his job. So it was just crazy, to be honest. It was so crazy looking back at that history, especially because I have been able to put that all in the back burner of my brain. And I am very focused on the present and what situations I'm dealing with in the present. So sometimes I forget how far we've actually come until I go look back at pictures, or people tell me a story, or they tell me, oh my gosh, I remember this one time I pulled up and there's a sign in the window, sorry, emergency, be right back in 5 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I ran over to go to the bathroom. Like, I remember those days. So all that to say, that first building that we did was great because we were able to make it. We survived, right? We did not pay ourselves really from the business for that first 2-ish years. I survived off the tips that customers gave to me, and we were able to save all the money, pay back our loans pretty fast, because again, they weren't very big loans. And then we took that money and we started to save because we knew that we needed another building. We knew that what we had was not sufficient. We knew we needed running water. We were growing to the point that now we had like 5 to 6 employees, and it was just a disaster. We were in the parking lot of a dental center, so they were able to walk over and use the dental center bathroom whenever. That was part of our like agreement when we paid rent. So they were okay there. It wasn't like they were put in a bad situation or unsafe. They were welcome to go to the bathroom whenever they needed to, but it just wasn't ideal. So we didn't pay ourselves. We saved and saved and saved and saved. And we ended up, excuse me, we ended up getting a whole new building at the 2-year mark. And we took the building we had, we literally just picked it up, took it out and placed the new one in there. We had to close for 1 whole day where we were hooking up the water, we were hooking up power and internet and all of that to the new building. We also had to take all the things out of the first building and into the second building. And at that time, we did invest in a second espresso machine. We replaced the first one that we had, and now that machine is actually here at our home. We use it as a backup machine. So it stays in our garage. We've completely gone through it since then. We've replaced all the parts and it's completely ready to go. Honestly, in some ways it's a big waste that it sits in our garage. But the good news is that if we ever were to get a phone call that the espresso machine at the shops were broken, it would literally just take us about 1 hour to take the machine we have here, run it over to the shop and replace it. I just went on a whole tangent. Okay, so that was like our 2-year mark. At about our 5-year mark, life had kind of changed a little bit for us by then. I was able to cut down to only working 4 days a week. But you should also know that at that 4 days a week mark, I had also started a whole other business as a wedding photographer. And business for me as a wedding photographer picked up. I was photographing about 20 to 25 weddings every summer. So the winter was pretty slow. I would work more at the coffee shop. But then in the summer, I would work Monday through Friday, or excuse me, Tuesday through Friday. Then Friday we would leave. I would go photograph a wedding all day Sunday. We'd come home, Saturday, come home on Sunday, take Monday off to get everything I needed done, and then go right back to work at the coffee shop on Tuesday. So it wasn't like we just had all this freedom and we weren't working. We were able to cut back a little bit now that we could afford more employees, but our lives were still very busy. And that's just who Casey and I are and how we like to be. We like to be busy. We don't like to sit around and do nothing. So that was at about the 5-year mark. And at that point, the business at the coffee shop was exceptional. I cannot believe we were so blessed, so blessed. The lines at the coffee shop would get around 20 cars in queue, 10 on both sides. The parking lot we were in was phenomenal. It is, we're still there. It's phenomenal because on the street like this, our building's right here, cars can line up this way and they can line up this way. So we're able to hold a ton of cars in queue. And the lines were just getting crazy, which was causing us to actually lose business. There's this point in business called the point of diminishing returns. It's where literally you get to a cap where you start to lose money because you're so busy. And we were there. We had reached that point because people would look at the lines, they would say, no way am I waiting in that line. And they would leave and go to our competition. So we started doing research and we were trying to figure out how we could help our business grow and help to be successful, and do it in a way that would still protect us, that wasn't going outside of our means, because Casey and I are just very cautious about our finances and just living safely because we don't want to put ourselves in a bad situation. So at that point, we had started looking around and we found a lot that we had loved. It was a blank, empty commercial lot in our town, but on the opposite side of town. And we fell in love with this lot. We did some research and we realized that we were able to pay cash for that lot. And so that was a huge blessing. We were really excited about it, but it was scary in a sense too, because it's just a piece of dirt. And we knew that there was gonna be a lot of work ahead of us. We ended up purchasing the lot, but before we just hit buy, even though it's not really how it works, but before we signed the papers and bought it, we did a lot of research because we wanted to make sure that the coffee shop that we wanted to put there was going to work there. one of the things that we ran into that was the biggest headache was working with the state of Idaho. We live in the state of Idaho, was working with the transportation department, because the road that the coffee shop is on, the second coffee shop, the road that we're on is considered a highway. And so we actually had to work within the city to get permits and all of that, but we also had to work with the state to get permission to have an entrance and an exit off of their highway. And that was a process. That alone took us 6 months to get approval. It went from person to person to person. One person said yes, one person said no. We had to work with an engineer to get plans. So we had an architect draw us up plans, and then the engineer worked to make sure that those plans were feasible. And then we had to submit the plans to the state, basically ask permission to have that entrance and exit. And when they said no, we would say, okay, what can we do? And luckily it never was a solid no. It was we do not approve this, change this, send it back. Ironically, you guys, hopefully this will make you laugh, because it wasn't funny at the time, but it's funny now. They had asked us to put in what they call a cement kidney. It's just a shape like this that forces you to turn right, and it forces you to enter, and you can't turn left around the kidney unless you really finagled around it. It basically forced our exit to be a right turn only, which we were fine with. So they said, put in this kidney, we will approve it. So our architect drew up plans, put in a kidney, we submitted it. Literally about 4 to 6 weeks go by and we hadn't heard from them. So we started calling. They said that the woman who was working on our case went on vacation, and so someone else was handling our case. He looked at our plans and said, take the kidney out. We're gonna put up stakes in the road on the highway at our cost, not us, them, the state. Put up stakes so that people literally cannot turn left, but take the kidney out. We were like, okay, awesome. We just saved ourselves around $5,000. Took the kidney out. We were like, okay, resubmit it. Again, 4 to 6 weeks go by. We start bugging them again. And we find out that the woman came back from vacation. She told the guy, no. She called us and said, put the kidney back in and I will approve it. Oh my gosh. We literally just took the plans that we submitted the first time and resubmitted them. It was a disaster, but I'm happy to say we have a kidney. There are no stakes in the road. It is a right turn exit only, but we did get our entrance and our exit off of that main highway. So that's just something that I feel like is good to share, because it ended up taking months to get that approved. And I feel like people just don't plan for that or don't expect that. And so I think it's important to talk about some roadblocks that we ran into and how that affected our business. So plans started, everything started going. We hired a contractor. We were so excited. It was actually our wedding anniversary, the day that they broke ground. Just so special to us and so exciting. Spirits were high. We were just over the moon. Construction started about September. And as we approached winter here in Idaho, we were getting pretty nervous because we had originally wanted to open in January. And as we got closer and closer and closer to the winter, it was making us more and more nervous, because part of the construction for us was putting in an asphalt driveway. We needed the parking spaces, we needed the whole thing. It was a lot of asphalt. And we had a day picked out. I believe it was in late November. I'll have to go rewatch our videos. I vlogged this entire journey for you guys. So if you haven't already watched that, sometimes the names are silly. I'm new to this vlogging journey, so I just talked about whatever is happening in our lives at that moment. But I talked about every step of the way, so you'll have to go watch those if you haven't yet. But I believe it was late November, if I'm right. They were scheduled to come pour the asphalt. And it was the morning of, I was headed to work. Casey ran over to the new building and the contractor was there with him, and it had rained overnight. And a big part of asphalt is that it cannot be wet. The ground cannot be wet. The ground cannot be frozen, and the outside temperature needs to be over 40 degrees. It had rained the night before and there were some wet spots. And Casey asked our contractor, he said, if we move forward with this today, will you warranty it? Because can you imagine, I will just share with you guys, the parking lot alone, the asphalt portion, was around $70,000. So we were so nervous that if we were to lay that asphalt in 1 year, if it was damp, it would cause it to crumble. And that was just way too much money for us to imagine having to replace. And the contractor thought about it a minute and he said no, he wouldn't. The asphalt trucks were there. They were sitting on the road. The asphalt was in the trucks and we turned them away, which was fine. It cost us a little bit of money to turn them away, but not $70,000 to turn them away. The other thing about asphalt plants is that in the winter they shut down. They do a full cleaning of their facilities. They shut the whole thing down. They lay off their workers temporarily. And so we knew when we turned them down that day that the chances of us getting asphalt until spring were basically zero. And we were right. So our spirits went down quite a bit. Here's what's funny. When planning this whole journey out, Casey and I accepted 2 very different roles, which is good. I think that that's so important if you're gonna have a business partner. Casey's role was very much the construction side. He handled all of that, which was so wonderful for me. He handled the permits, he handled working with the contractor, the electrician, he handled the equipment purchasing, he handled all of that stuff, which is not my forte. I am so, so, so grateful for him. I could not have done this without Casey. I handled the employees. So I handled hiring, training, scheduling, working with the employees, working with the management, trying to get that whole side set up, as well as our marketing and just overall operations, the drinks, all of that. So it takes 2 very different sides to make it one whole. So when we got delayed, not only was it frustrating because we were so excited, financially it was a little scary because we were hoping to get income from that shop in January. At that point, we had no idea when we were gonna get income from that second shop. The other thing is that me, as my role in the business, I had no idea when I was supposed to start hiring and training these new staff because I needed time to train them. But if I hired them too early, then they would have no hours available to them. And that's a big part for us, is about balancing how big of a staff that we want and need so that people get all the hours that they hope for, but then if they take time off, we're not in a bad position. I was so stressed and so down. And when I go back and I watch the videos of me at that time, I can see it. I can see it in my features. I can see it in my smile. Even though I tried to work my way through it, I was so stressed. And I still was working at the coffee shop 4 to 5 days a week, depending on the week. Every morning at 4:30 in the morning, I was there. I opened, so I worked the 5 a.m. shift until 11 a.m. shift. And then after that, I was working on everything new shop related. So it was just a lot. And having customers be so excited and ask so many questions, I mean, it's exciting and I love it. But after a while, it just was wearing me down because I didn't have answers and I felt pressured and overwhelmed, and it became like an emotional thing for me just because I was like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to your questions. I don't know. I wish I knew. And it was so hard not to get frustrated and not to take it out on people who didn't deserve it. It was a rough time. But in March, we were able to get asphalt. I believe it was March 14th or 15th of last year. The plants reopened, we had a great day, it was dry, it was over 40, and finally asphalt got laid. And the contractor, we were watching the weather every single day. I don't think I've ever watched the weather as much in my entire life as that and my wedding day. But holy cow. So we were watching it, we had a pretty good idea. Rough, very rough, but pretty good idea. So I was able to hire and start the training process, which was crazy because I ended up hiring to start with 18, and then that number ended up going over to just over 20 new people. And so the training process for all of that and trying to get them in to work at our other shops so they could get experience actually helping customers and stuff, it was very, very trying. But we made it work. And then on April 1st of last year, we were able to turn on the open sign. And there's a whole vlog that I did on that day. So I would love for you guys to go watch that if you haven't yet. It says, an April Fools Will Never Forget. That's what it was called. So that was long. Are you still here? Are you still watching? That's crazy. Crazy if you are, and thank you if you are. That is our journey over the past, I guess it's 7 years, right? Close. I think 6.5 years. And it blows my mind that we're sitting here today at 1 year in business with the new shop. Absolutely blows my mind. It does not feel like a year has passed. So crazy. So a look, I guess, at my life now. I have posted a few recent vlogs, and I would love for you to watch those so that you can just kind of see. I've kind of talked about what life has looked like for us after 2 shops, and just kind of like where we're going from here. I do not put myself on the schedule at the coffee shops anymore, which is a big change, because for 6 years I was on the schedule 4 to 5 days a week, if not 7 days a week. And so that was a big change. At first, I will admit I was very excited about it, because I do not love waking up at 4 in the morning every single day. Not a morning person. I am a night owl. And so I was kind of excited for that freedom. I was excited to finally feel like the fruits of what I had built, I was able to harvest. I was able to sleep in. I was able to not feel pressure to be there every single day. But with that came a whole new challenge. When we did first open, I still was working quite a bit. So it did take probably like 2 months to kind of finally get to the point where I could pull myself off the schedule. But I had a very hard time letting go, because this has been my baby. And I know every single customer for the most part. I know all their drinks. I know that I am a successful barista. That's why the company has made it as far as it did, because I was there from day one. So it was a really big adjustment for me to not be there every single day. And it was an adjustment for our customers and for my fellow employees who were so used to me being there every single day. And it took a while for us to find a new normal. In fact, that was one of my goals for 2019. I literally wrote that down. I said, find a new normal, because I was prepared that life was about to change drastically for us. I was trying to go back and forth between both shops, working normal shifts. I was putting myself on the schedule, but I was getting so burnt out. And I think in my mind, I had already counted on, okay, once both shops are going, I'm going to let myself have a little bit of a rest. Granted, I still do wedding photography. I am still very blessed to be running a successful wedding photography business. I travel all over the world photographing weddings, to Italy, Mexico, Hawaii, New York. I have been everywhere photographing weddings. That is like an entire other business that I'm also running at the same time as the coffee shops. So even though I wasn't at the coffee shops, I still was working basically a full-time job behind the scenes for photography. And because now that we had 2 shops, my behind the scenes roles had increased 2 times. And some people joke that when you have a second business, like 2 locations, that your behind the scenes work actually triples. And I have to agree with that. As far as like marketing, training, hiring, payroll, HR, the books, all of that stuff goes, it did feel like it tripled behind the scenes. So life got a little bit easier in the sense I wasn't waking up at 4 a.m. every day, but life did get a little bit harder in the sense that now there were double the problems. There were double the employees I had to hire and train. There were double the meetings, double the products to order, double the inventory to keep track of. And so that just kind of like blew my mind, because I had a normal and then that was gone. Today I actually went and worked a shift. We had an employee who ended up having to move very drastically thanks to COVID-19. A military spouse had to move, and so I ended up covering her shift today. And it actually felt good for me because it was so normal. It was something I was so used to, and so being in there felt so good. But a lot of comments were made from like customers where they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in ages. And I'm like, I know, I'm so sorry. And that does make me feel guilty, and it makes me feel bad. And I'm sharing that openly with you guys just because it is something to be prepared for if you walk down this journey. And I know that I'm there a lot. I know that I see these people, but it does feel weird when I haven't seen them in 2 weeks when I'm used to seeing them every single day. So life has changed a lot for us. It has a lot. And it's especially changed a lot in the past 2 weeks. I don't want to dwell on this. We have heard so much about COVID-19, all of us. I think we're all just like minds are over it. We're full of it. But I feel like for those of you who have followed us for so long, I think it's important to touch on how we're doing through it, and just let you know like how things are going for us. Idaho was one of the last states to get COVID. We were like the last four, the final four. There was some hilarious memes going around about it. And so I feel like we were some of the last to kind of make adjustments that as far as like quarantining and isolation and stay-at-home orders, all of that. And so leading up until that, we kind of operated business as normal. However, these became like our best friend, and we were using them between every single car. And we also set alarms on our work iPads at the stores every single hour, a mandatory time that we made all employees stop what they were doing and go wash their hands. We also switched over to our straws. We just bought in bulk, and now we buy the ones that are covered in paper and hand them to customers so that they can put their own straw in. So we've definitely been making some changes, but nothing was like mandated from the state until last week. And what the state chose is that all lobbies of restaurants had to close. So at our one shop, the Shed, nothing really changed for us there. And then at our second location, we had to close the lobby down. Ironically, we had already closed our lobby down the day before. We just felt like that was our civic duty, and we just wanted to eliminate as many contamination and things as possible. So we had shut our lobby down the day before. And then ironically, the governor put out a thing the next day saying that we had to close our lobby. So we were prepared and already had handled that, so that worked out good. At this time, our business is still allowed to be open. That being said, we are constantly watching for things from the CDC. We're constantly making adjustments to make things safer for our employees and for our customers. There is a very good distance between where the cars are and where the drive-thru is. So we are maintaining a social distance. The girls are putting the drinks and then letting the customers take the drinks. So we are doing everything that we can to make sure that our employees are safe and that our customers are safe, because they're our world. This is our community, and we want our community to be safe. We are so blessed that we have drive-thrus and that we are able to stay open during this time. I have so many small business friends right now who have called me in tears, who are scared, who have no idea what the future looks like for them. And I am scared, and I have no idea what the future looks like for us. But I am trying to remain positive. I am trying to take this day by day. And I'm trying to just make sure that we are all being as safe as possible. Casey and I are home unless we're at work, or we go to the grocery store. But even that, I've tried to just raid our own freezer. It's a good time to clean out our freezer. So I know everyone has varying opinions on how to handle this situation. And so for that, if you have disagreed, I guess, with how we're handling it, I'm so sorry. We're trying to follow everything the CDC has told us, but we're also trying to stay alive as far as a business goes. And we're trying to do it in a way that is as protective as possible. So that's my small update. It's even longer than I had originally hoped for, but I have had a lot of you guys reach out via Instagram, via email, and just ask how we're doing through that. And so that's so special to me that you guys care about us and that you're thinking of us. Obviously, we're celebrating our 1-year anniversary at home, not doing anything. I made roast in the crock pot, and that is how we're gonna celebrate our 1 year. It is way different than I thought we would. Might open up a good bottle of wine tonight. We're trying to keep our spirits high around here and just be grateful that we made it a year, even though it just feels crazy. It feels so crazy. Yesterday, Idaho, right where we're at, like within, I don't even know, not very far. We had a 5.6 magnitude earthquake. No, I lied to you, 6.5 magnitude earthquake. And I looked at Casey and I was like, that's it. The world's ending. This is it. This is the end. Oh, so it's just been crazy for us. All right, guys, my camera shut off. It was like, you're done, Bree, shut up. But I want to thank you guys for being followers, for being here, for going through this journey with us. Thank you guys for all the support, the messages, the emails, the follows. You guys are amazing, and we love creating content for you, and we hope that it helps you. We hope that it inspires you. We hope that so many of you start your own coffee journey, and we can be a part of it too. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. We love it so much. We're gonna go celebrate our 1 year with pot roast and wine, but I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your day, and thank you so much for being here and following along with our journey. We'll talk soon.